Good evening and welcome to Starcast from Planet Waves. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer, here with a special as in unscheduled edition for overnight Sunday the 20th of April to Monday the 21st of April. I'll probably send this out a second time early tomorrow just to make sure that everyone I think might benefit from it will have it to benefit from. I come to you because the astrology of the next few days into Saturday, into the weekend, is quite unusual and a little bit overbearing. But in my experience, with awareness and just a little bit of planning and really understanding the nature of the environment, the worst effects of these things can usually be sidestepped, and that requires knowing where we are at, knowing what the conditions of the environment are. And before I talk about those, I want to just develop this idea a little bit that astrology is a description of environmental conditions. It's just a kind of environmental condition that most people don't think is relevant. But the environment I'm talking about is the shape of the solar system and the Earth's orientation within the solar system. And then here we are on Earth, going about our lives. And somehow there is some association between this whole shape of the solar system thing and the psychic climate that we are in. For example, an emotional climate, a mental climate, certain things may arise, and often these are described in this astrological picture. Now, for those who are, or who think they are, completely committed to rational thought, I would like to spend an hour with you and see if that's really true. Those committed to rational thought would say, who think they're committed to rational thought. Sorry, I don't mean to pay any needless compliments here. I would say, well, there can't possibly be any association between the shape of the solar system and the position of the moon and the planets and anything that anyone anywhere experiences. But in that case, we might ask why a cycle, a very distinct cycle that's been mapped out historically, the Saturn-Pluto cycle, has a major event in 2001, and bang, 2001 happens. And then it has another major event in 2020, and bang, another thing that is eminently descriptive of and described by all the historical references back to this aspect pattern. We get something that was not exactly predictable in terms of the specifics, though the discussion does include quote-unquote plagues. I'm talking about Rick Tarnas's work with Cosmos and Psyche, the book that's on every astrology student's wish list to read. And then you find out if you really can handle 700 pages of these cycles. But the idea here is that just because we don't know what this association is about, how it might work, doesn't mean that it's not observable, that it's not readable. And I think that this exists largely in this realm of what you might call metaphor. Now, you think of metaphor as something in a book, it's hard to think of metaphors on the fly, but a metaphor is it's an example, an illustration given without the words like or as. As soon as you put a comparative word in, like or as, it's no longer a metaphor. And very few writers write in metaphors or capable of writing in metaphors. Often they give a kind of an analogy. It's sort of like that. Okay, so in any event, here we are, well into now beginning in Taurus season. The sun at the moment is at 1:15, so we're about 30 hours into Taurus season as of my recording at 10:40 p.m. daylight time here in Kingston, by the way. And what's interesting about this very moment, and I was going to think, I think maybe I'll do this tomorrow, something like that, and I'm like, no, do this tonight. So I opened up my ancient MacBook Air, which runs the main computer that I run the old astrology software on, and I'm seeing, the moon is about to be conjunct Pluto. That's just the kind of aspect I'm here to talk about. It's just this kind of potential for an inward kind of despair that I would like to see if maybe it's possible to sort of coach you out of. And just for fun, I'm going to put the last week's horoscope. I'm going to open up last week's horoscope, and you can get a little more specific in terms of how I parse this out for the 12 general categories, the signs, and the rising sign. So let me get to what the meta theme here is. The meta theme here is that Venus and Mars are often the planets that are the most palpable to us in terms of being able to feel them, being able to experience them in some tangible way. Of course, the sun and the moon absolutely qualify, but they're not planets. They're called luminaries. And Mercury is important. Mercury is somewhat involved, but we really had the big show from Mercury over happening last week, the changing signs, conjunction to Neptune, and all of that. And so Venus and Mars are going to be very active this week, and they are active in the sequence of their recent retrograde. So Venus has recently gone direct. Mars went direct a month and a half ago or so. I don't have all those dates, but just suffice it to say that Mars was retrograde over a chunk of the winter, and then it takes a couple of months to wind out, to unwind that. And then Venus was retrograde from late winter into early spring. That was a 6-week episode. And it, too, is still working out. And by working out, I mean that in looking at an astrology chart, the retrograde shows the planet going backwards. This, of course, is motion relative to the Earth. It's really it's relative motion between the Earth and the planet that's retrograde. That's what creates the illusion, the effect of retrograde planets. And it's only discernible from the Earth. If you were looking at the heliocentric chart, with the sun in the center, there are no retrogrades in the heliocentric chart, only in the geocentric chart, which is the one that most astrologers use for personal and mundane astrology. So, Venus and Mars coming out of their retrogrades. Mars, last week, re-entered Leo. It was retrograde much of the time in Cancer. That in itself very difficult because of the emotional nature of Cancer and the kind of held down, repressed nature of Mars retrograde. The two combined can have a depressive effect because it's so difficult to express yourself with Mars retrograde and to express your desires with Mars retrograde. Put that into Cancer, and it's like not only not knowing what you feel, what you want, that's Mars, but not knowing what you feel, that is Cancer. So Mars has worked out this portion of the retrograde and is now approaching its third opposition to Pluto. So earlier in the retrograde, Mars made two oppositions to Pluto, but that was at the very end of the Pluto in Capricorn experience that is now over. That began in 2008. It ends in 2024, and Pluto is in Aquarius to stay. That alone, of course, highly descriptive of the rapid onset of this whole artificial intelligence scam that is being foisted on a society where most of the people are mentally and spiritually weakened previously by all the previous generations of digital overexposure, and people are getting tired. When you're tired, you can make bad decisions because your perception is off. And so though it happens second, it happens on the 26th. That looks like it's on that's on April 20th. Yeah, Saturday, the 25th. Let's start with the approach of Mars in Leo to Pluto in Aquarius. So this is building all week. That's called applying. And it's applying after two previous contacts. And so there's something of a culmination here. There's something of, okay, what is this thing that we are getting ready to see for what it is and leave behind? And so Mars and Leo, the tendency of Mars and Leo is to be self-centered, to be egocentric. I use that word reluctantly. You can probably count on one hand the times you've heard me use the word ego. But it has that quality of being self-centered, a bit egocentric, and proud, and wants what it wants, period. And it can be a little bit overly exerting of its desire in early Leo. Early Leo has that quality of like rushing a bit, and it's going to oppose Pluto in Aquarius. Now, Pluto is a much more remote energy. It's kind of, you don't really know it's there until you run into it. You don't know it's there until you encounter it, and usually that encounter is pretty deep and typically doesn't really go that well in the short term, and then you say, okay, I'm glad I went through that. I wouldn't be the same person had I not gone through that. So we've got Pluto at about 3.5 degrees, a little bit more, 3.5 degrees of Aquarius, and Mars now approaching. Mars is a little into the 2nd degree of Aquarius, so that's why it's going to take Mars, still slow, still powerful. After the retrograde, it's still in shadow phase coming out. That means slow and influential, and is going to oppose Pluto. That is a confrontation. And by the way, right now, the moon is in early Aquarius. It is exactly opposite Mars right now as I am speaking. It's going to be conjunct Pluto in about an hour and a half. Well, just past midnight, it's going to be conjunct Pluto. So the moon at the moment, at this time, this is to say overnight, Sunday to Monday, the moon is highlighting this. And when you bring something like the moon, which represents kind of an emotional body, it can represent a collective factor, especially in Aquarius, and then it's going to be conjunct Pluto and opposite Mars. That could be dramatic. That could have a sense of influence, an impact, emotional, personal, private impact. Now, there happens to be a few things in this pattern. In this pattern, we have the moon and Mars and Pluto and the sun. The sun is now square Pluto and Mars. There's a T-square. Mercury's right there. Neptune's right there. So there's a lot of planets involved now. Clearly, this is why my spirit voice would not let me just go upstairs and do something else besides record this, and I'm sending it out to you. And maybe one of you, you're the only person listening. And if you are, then, say, wave or send me an email at efc@planetwaves.net. Okay, so we've got this thing going on. And the thing to know is that, first of all, this is confrontational. And second, it is something of a game of chicken, because in any transaction described by Mars opposite Pluto, the person who exerts the force is going to lose. Therefore, if you sense a confrontation coming, you don't have to do much about it except pay attention. Keep your focus. Know what's going on. Pay attention to the relevant facts. Pay attention to where people are at. Anything that needs to be confronted is kind of going to reveal itself and confront itself, and I don't want to use the word automatic in a sense, but it's going to move. The action point of Mars opposite Pluto needs no help whatsoever. It will happen. Now, it's hot-headed, it's confrontational, but you want to be a little like the Godfather and play close to the vest. Okay, now, ahead of that, about 2 days ahead of that, on the 24th, we are experiencing an aspect involving Venus. And so this is 2 days before Mars opposite Pluto comes to fruition. So with that aspect still going on, there is this very tight, powerful cluster in late Pisces. And at the center of that cluster is the conjunction, again, the third, because it's all about the retrograde. When it's a retrograde, usually there's 3 iterations. Venus conjunct Saturn. Now, this has got a diversity of expressions. I've been cautious about the depressive quality of this and the sense of being hemmed in, and there not seeming to be very many possibilities, not a lot of emotional wiggle room with Mars conjunct Venus, with Venus conjunct Saturn, right? Venus, the soft and emotive quality, the sensory quality, and it's mixed up with Saturn, which is rigid and representative of structure, boundaries, limitations, the structure of time, and all that, and together there can be a depressive quality to this. But there's also something important here about working through whatever that quality is and being present for your feelings, even if they're difficult, even if you're having a hard time. I mean, at least, Easter's behind us. At least, you've already gone through whatever family mishigas you may have to, go through being re-subjected to authority through visiting family. It's always tricky territory there. They're very good at pushing our buttons. But then there's also the manifesting quality of this. And Venus and Saturn can work very well together if there is a sense of what that combination is, a combination of a kind of inspiration of Venus and loving quality of Venus and a firm and disciplined quality of Saturn. So I don't quite know what that's about, but I'm suggesting here that you pay attention to both of these qualities, the potentially depressive quality, and then that would go with the need to work through difficult material, and then also the manifestation factor. What is it that you are building? What is it that you want to make? What commitment are you maybe testing? Because there's certainly a sense of testing a commitment with Venus conjunct Saturn. It's kind of like a difficult point in an emotional encounter, and you have to sweat it out and see what's there. Of course, you might not sweat it out. You might just kind of decide to throw your hands up, but that doesn't usually work so good. So the thing here is that these are happening within 48 hours of one another, which kind of makes them a simultaneous experience. But remember that the conjunction is likely to manifest inwardly, the conjunction of Venus and Saturn. That's a whole inner world of feelings. and the opposition of Mars to Pluto is more likely to manifest outwardly in some form of confrontation or heads banging in some way, or maybe somebody starting something with you. So be prepared. Be prepared with the blank stare if you need to apply the blank stare so that you're not getting involved in a confrontation. And I would say that under this astrology, it is always safe to walk away from any confrontation, because it doesn't solve anything, but it's going to prevent a needless escalation into something destructive. Whereas if you walk away and you leave it alone, it is much more likely to work out in your favor, because everybody's going to play their hand, and then you'll be able to see what they've got going on. So this is a little bit of strategic coaching here in a week that I think is calling for just exactly that, because this is why I read astrology, to be able to see these things. Now, what is impressive about the Thursday pattern on the 24th, Mumi Abu Jamal's birthday, by the way, is that it is not only a conjunction of Venus and Saturn. It's Venus and Saturn on the lunar node, the lunar north node, now in Pisces. And the lunar node, by the way, is not direct. It's not retrograde. Pardon. It is direct motion. The node's motion is always retrograde on average, but then a couple of days a week, the node is moving in direct motion. And what that does is it can flip the polarity of the nodes, or say that the north or the south can act as the north or the south. And so it brings up more possibilities. And I learned from Al Morrison that when the node is not retrograde, it emphasizes the node more than usual. And so in this highly emphasized state of the lunar node being technically in direct motion, we get this suddenly at 8:01 p.m. EDT, so it's 8:01:45 p.m., 8:02 Eastern Time, New York time. It's a tight conjunction, meaning within about 1.5 degrees, Moon, Node, Saturn, Venus. And the moon is involved, so that means anything near the pattern gets picked up by the moon. And Ceres is right there at 22 and change, and Nessus is right there. We kind of get a little Pisces expression of the family Hunger Game, of this kind of emotional desperation that most of us come out of our families with, because they're really... These days in families, I mean, we've kind of gone from this whole routine in the late 60s and 70s of total neglect of the children, going into the parenting of like the mid 80s and further with this helicopter parenting, neither of which are helpful. I would, if I were given the choice of which I think is better, probably neglect is better than this overbearing style of parenting that we have today, where everything's monitored and the kid gets to take no risks. Well, those of us who are a little older learned that everything we ever accomplished in life involved taking some risk, and God does wash drunks, fools, and little children. Anyway, there is this tight, compact group all in the last decade of Pisces. Nessus, this centaur planet, about consequences, Ceres involving mother-daughter relationships, the situation with food, all this mass-produced food. So let's see. At the moment, when did this? So the conjunction as of right now, it's a little bit less than 1 degree. It was exact over the weekend. Very interesting to have Ceres conjunct Nessus over a holiday weekend. And, we're seeing this with this ongoing disaster of mass-produced food. I don't know how bad the the culling, the mass murder of chickens, meaning livestock, is going on for this completely hallucinated, made-up crisis of bird flu. There is no bird flu, and if you're wondering why that is, you really think I'm crazy, write to me, and I'll send you back an email with references explaining what this problem is. But Ceres represents what is mass-produced. It represents anything that essentially is turned from some form of a handcraft into something that is mechanized. Agriculture, i.e. wild plants versus agricultural plants. Ceres represents agricultural plants. And there's a tinge of sadness around Ceres. So this is there is some kind of a cluster coming into basically Wednesday through Thursday that you may feel brewing, followed by a kind of a release, an expression of something that seems to maybe not be related, but is still going to reverberate much more powerfully in the outer world. So pay attention and don't get swept up in depressive emotions. This is really one of those weeks to slow down the movie, to not burn the candle at both ends. Anything that can be put off to next week, pretty much, if you think it's going to be hot or confrontational or too much work or whatever, give it a week. This is the week to pace yourself, to set modest goals that you know you can meet. Give yourself plenty of time and plenty of space. Meanwhile, big astrology brewing in the background. Saturn getting ready to move into Aries. That's in May. Chiron getting ready to make its first conjunction to Eris since 1972. That's also in May. There's a lot brewing in the background. So that will have ways of kind of jumping into the present and reminding us of its existence, reminding us that it's back there, and that there's a kind of activity kind of waiting right in the wings. It's in the Rita. It's in the realm of all possibilities, but it's a little closer to the surface, and we don't know what this is about. And lately I've had this feeling that I just don't like, that there's going to be some big new scam foisted at us. And remember that they, meaning the world managers, these bankers and technocrats and political leaders, they are really not leaving us alone for a day. There's always some new thing that the so-called media seize upon. And when you check into it, usually it's complete horseshit. We've been looking at the bombing of the governor, the fire at the governor of Pennsylvania's house, total false flag horseshit. The shooting in Florida at Tallahassee a couple of days later, total false flag horseshit. This is just designed to prop up the anxiety level of people who are, it is fair to say, in a serious addiction cycle with anxiety. And the world knows this. These managers, these world managers who are planning these events and then reporting, quote unquote, reporting on them, know the people are in a very, very stressed out state right now, much more than we think. We've had no chance to recover from any of the insanity and mishigas, barely getting our life routines back, with everything much more stretched than it was in 2019. And it's been a while since this whole bullshit went down in 2020, followed by bullshit 2.0 in 2021. Highly irresponsible conduct by people who know that they really don't have things under control. They're just acting like they do And then the next thing is, well, anything goes. Let's just keep throwing ever more chaos, mishigas, distraction, pain, suffering. Flash it on the screen. This has got to stop. And one of the ways to stop it is to start to direct your energy to more creative things that don't bore you, things that engage you, things where you get to express yourself, experiences where you just get to feel. All right, reminder, Astrology.Boutique. That is where you can find the very best of the work that I have to offer, including personal consultations and conversations, but also lots of things that are easily accessible, plenty of samples on there. You could spend a whole day just playing the samples and probably get much of what you need. In any event, you do know where to find me, efc@planetwaves.net. I'm going to let this piece play out. By the way, we are in all Eno month, the month of Taurus. So everything I play on any of my channels is going to have something to do with Brian Eno. And the piece I'm going to let play out for about the next 15-20 minutes is called 5 Light Paintings. 5 Light Paintings by Brian Eno. From Music for Installations. Lots of love. And bye for now.